In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 209 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing better, man.
Yeah, I like that. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you're in studio. It's all amazing.
Trying to get there, man. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah?
I'm doing very well. My daughter is home early,
Yeah?
and I think we'll be here through the Thanksgiving holiday, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Probably have at least a week with her.
What's that stuff on your face, man?
Got a new beard.
Yeah?
That-
Got a new one?
Well, it's a new one.
Yeah? Or just say beard?
I bought it.
Yeah.
it's a stick-on.
Yeah.
No, I grew a beard for you
Oh, yeah?
in honor of you, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to shave until Gibby comes back.
Yeah.
Well, then it became November,
Right.
and I thought this is the month where, a lot of guys don't shave, so I'm just going to let it ride.
Just going to see how long you can go?
Yep.
All right.
And we'll see how it goes.
Well,
The wife is about 50-50 on it,
well, you know what?
to be honest with you.
Just tell her to hang out for a little bit longer.
Because that always works.
Yeah. Maybe not say it that way.
Yeah, maybe not. All right, buddy. We got some new Patreon supporter shout outs. Let's
All right.
give those. We had Ginger Wilson,
Hey, Ginger.
Stephanie Blaze,
What's going on, Stephanie?
Abby Yinger,
Hey, Yinger.
Trudy Canner.
Canner. Just be canner about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's not, I don't know what that means, but I'll go with it.
Well, I was just making it up.
Annie Sharin Brew,
Hey, Brew.
Carrie Grist,
What's going on, Carrie?
Deborah Maddox,
Hey, Maddox.
Christina Rosales,
Rosales.
Jill Chandler,
Hey, Jill.
Tice Alvarez,
What's going on, Tice?
Selina Fujita jumped out at her highest level.
Awesome. Thank you, Fujita.
We had James,
Hey, James.
Amy Armstrong,
What's happening, Amy?
Bronwyn Geddes,
Hey, Bronwyn.
Julie Perky,
What's going on, Perky?
Robert Buckles jumped out at her highest level,
Good old Buckles.
Brooke Lynch,
Hey, Brooke.
Jeremy Martin,
Hey, Jeremy.
Ruth,
Hey, Ruth.
Seneca Probst.
I kind of like that name, Seneca.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Tawny Talbot,
What's happening, Tawny?
Marlene Stewart,
Hey, Marlene.
Isaac Hickman jumped out at her highest level,
Hey, thank you, Isaac.
and Justin Yoder did as well.
The good old Yoder, man.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
really, really cool. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs,
Okay.
this week we selected Jenny Murray.
Hey, our good friend Jenny.
Yep. So Jenny got the vault this week. It's awesome. She's been with us a very long time.
Yes, she has.
We appreciate that new support as well as the continued Patreon support. We had some amazing PayPal donations. Lucas Zulist,
Zulis.
Sue Lewis,
Hey, Sue.
Susanna Elliott,
What's happening, Susanna?
and Jordan Savage
Hey.
made a pretty sizable donation.
That's awesome, Jordan.
So
Thank you.
thanks to all of you as well. So Gibbs, right now, we have a brand new episode of Unsolved out. We're talking about the disappearance of Suzanne Morphew in Colorado. This is a very current case.
Yeah, it's active.
She disappeared in May of this year.
Right.
So a little different for us, a little newer than what we normally do, but it's a very interesting case with, a lot of back and forth and, some of the people believe this and
Exactly.
others believe that. So we'll dive into all of that stuff. I definitely want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving who celebrates it. And if you don't, we wish you
Just a
happy
Thursday. Man.
Thursday. Exactly. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
Let's do it.
We are talking about the story of Richard Crafts and the murder of his wife, Helle Crafts. A lot of times you'll see this referred to as the Woodchipper murder. And it's also been cited by the Coen brothers as part of their inspiration for the movie Fargo.
Pretty gruesome inspiration.
Yeah. I mean, that movie, I can't remember when it came out, but it's got to be 25 years old, give or take.
Oh, man, I can't even remember.
90s, wouldn't you think?
At least 20 years old, right?
Yeah. It won an Academy Award. Now, I think it gets very high marks.
Yeah.
But it's still one of those movies that people are divided on. A lot of people really love it. And then you've got some people that just like, oh, that is not my cup of tea at all.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. But again,
I understand where you,
yeah, that's kind of my quirky humor zone. So let's head to New England to find out the details behind one of Connecticut's most gruesome murders. Richard Kraft met Helle Nielsen in the spring of 1969. Helle was born in Copenhagen, Denmark in 1947. We got a big contingent of listeners in Denmark.
We do. We really do.
She was extremely intelligent, loved to learn. She was fluent in a number of languages.
Just like me.
Very, very much like you.
Yeah.
She attended college in England, as did you, and later lived in France and worked as an au pair, as I know you did as well.
Man, that au pair job I had, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you were Tiger's au pair before his wife jumped in?
Right, exactly.
His later to-be wife?
Yeah.
I know it was a good gig.
He paid me good too.
At the age of 20, Helle landed a job in France as a flight attendant, and that was a job that took her all over the world, as it is for a lot of flight attendants,
Sure.
especially if you're on those international routes. I mean, man, you are really going all over.
And she later got a job with Pan Am back in Denmark. Pan Am, pretty big back in the day. I mean, even Leo worked for him.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden, no more Pan Am.
Mm-mm.
But my assumption is she parlayed her experience with what was probably a smaller airline in France into a bigger job with Pan Am. But it was that job with Pan Am that took her to Miami, Florida for classes. And that's where she met Richard Kraft. Now, Richard was born in New York City, the son of a successful businessman. He grew up in an affluent area of Connecticut. He graduated from Darien High School in 1955. I think he dabbled a little bit in college, but it wasn't for him. He ended up joining the Marines in 1956. And that's where he learned to fly. It was as a Marine.
Yeah.
He flew helicopters in Korea. I think he was in Okinawa for a bit. There are some reports that he flew some clandestine missions for the CIA in Laos and Vietnam with Air America.
Wow. So he definitely was experienced.
Yeah. And not just with helicopters. I think by that time when he was with Air America, that's when he started flying planes. That's where he got his real experience. So, I think when he returned to the States in 1966, he pretty quickly got a job as an airline pilot with Eastern Airlines. And again, we're talking about a lot of airlines that were big back in the day that were either gobbled up or they're just no longer around.
Yeah, I was just thinking, my grandfather was a pilot for TWA.
Yep, that was another big one.
Yeah.
Pan Am, TWA.
Yeah.
I think Eastern was fairly large.
I think so too.
Maybe not on the same scale as those two. But it was this job with Eastern that led him to meet Helle in 1969. They were, at the time, both training in Miami. So Gibbs, not really a lot of background in this one. But to me, it is interesting to see how two people with such different backgrounds end up meeting, right? You've got Helle from Denmark. This guy grew up in Connecticut. She traveled all over the world. He was literally all over the world as well, but with the Marines. And then fate, kismet, chance, whatever you want to call it, draws them together in Miami, Florida in 1969. At the time they met, Richard was engaged to a woman, but Richard and Helle maintained a relationship that started then, continued over the years. My assumption is they saw each other when they could, because as a pilot and a flight attendant, they were flying all over the world.
Right.
I would think pretty hard to get your schedules to line up.
I would think so too, Make it perfectly match that you could be able to, maybe now and then, you just,
Sure.
luck of the draw, got on the same flight. Or
It would have to be, hey, I'm going to be in wherever, New York on this date. Well, I am too.
Yeah, I'll have a day layover here
Yep.
or whatever.
My assumption is that's how it went for a number of years. But then in 1975, the two got married. After Helle became pregnant, they bought a house in Newtown, Connecticut, and later had 2 more children. So Newtown, back then, not very well known.
No.
Very well known today because of the school shooting.
Yeah.
So, it's not well known for a good reason,
No.
an infamous reason, but it is well known. She eventually hired an au pair to watch the kids and returned to Pan Am as a flight attendant. She was described by coworkers as, the type of person that was liked by everyone. She was very personable. She was very friendly. Richard was making really good money as a pilot. I saw one report, Gibbs, that said their combined income in the early 80s was somewhere around $125,000.
Yeah, that was really good money.
That's a lot of money in
Yeah.
the early 1980s. It's quite a bit of money today. I mean, you can live very well as a family with an income of $125,000.
Yeah, but
Now you're not cruising around on yachts or buying ski, second home ski places in Aspen, but
still doing
it's
okay.
very respectable money.
Yeah, your fridge is full.
Yeah, and you can buy a lot of things that you want. But in 1980, gosh, you could pretty much buy probably just about any. They were living extremely comfortable, is the way I would put it.
I would have said the same thing, yeah.
Why didn't you?
Because you beat me to it.
In 1982, Richard became an auxiliary police officer in Newtown, which to me is interesting. Here's a guy with a big time job. He's a pilot at Eastern Airlines making a boatload of money. He didn't get paid to do this auxiliary police job. In fact, he ended up spending a bunch of his own money. He bought a Crown Victoria and kind of decked it out,
Yeah.
to make it look like a cop car.
Maybe that was something he just really wanted to do. He wanted to feel like he was a, police officer, important.
Well, he was a guy who had collected guns for a long time. He had a very large gun collection. I got the sense that he was the type of guy that longed for some power.
Yeah.
Maybe the kind of power or the kind of feeling that could only come from being in that type of authoritative position. And maybe that's why he did it. Because, like I said, it's a guy that's making a lot of money. He has what has been described by many people as a very stressful job. It's a lot of responsibility.
And it is. I remember growing up near the airport, and I would work at the airport or the hotels around the airport where the pilots would come in at nighttime, right? They would stay over.
Were you working by the hour at that point, or where's this story heading?
Anyway, so they'd be sitting in the bar at the hotel that I would work night shift to clean up afterwards, right?
Uh-huh.
But they'd be in there just shit-faced, drunk, right?
Trying
Knowing that
to-
they're going to fly out the very next.
Trying to relieve the pressure,
Yeah.
or
And sometimes they would just get in fights with anybody because they were just so stressed from what they had to do throughout the day.
well, you were literally in the air, responsible for however many hundreds of people are on some of those big planes.
And they had that tight. They had a tight time frame. They had to, make sure they're at this gate by that time, or
Right.
the next gate, and
But also, he has a wife.
yeah,
He has 3 kids at home.
It's a lot of responsibility.
That's a lot of responsibility as well. But hey, in my free time, I'm going to essentially play police officer.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing. You're not getting paid.
No.
You're just doing it for the fun of it.
I guess you don't want to be around your kids.
Well,
I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
I think there's a lot of different ways you could look at it. A few years later, he did get hired on as a part-time police officer in a neighboring town. One report said he made about $7 an hour doing this part-time. So again, it wasn't for the money.
No.
He didn't need the money. So I think you have to make the assumption that he was in it for another reason, most likely for the power or the feeling of power that it brought to him.
The prestige.
Maybe that too.
Yeah.
So, I think, Gibbs, here again, you have a couple who, on paper, and I say that quite a bit, seemingly have it all, right? They have a family, they have plenty of money. On the outside, it seems like a perfect situation. But we know, and have talked about this in a lot of cases, these types of images can be very deceiving. I guarantee you that everybody listening knows a couple who, you look at them and say, wow, man, I envy them. They've got everything maybe that I'd like to have, or they're just really doing well.
Yeah.
But you have no idea. They could be having knockdown dragouts behind closed doors every night.
I remember I used to know this couple. I thought they were just exactly like that.
The bee's knees.
Yeah. And then you get that crushing news that this one or that one or both of them were cheating on each other.
Mm-hmm.
You thought, I just thought you guys would never fall apart.
Well, and then it all comes out, right?
Exactly.
All the skeletons in the closet come out, and you find out that, whether it's physical altercations or cheating, or they were nowhere near this kind of perfect couple, or they weren't on the pedestal that we or everyone put them on.
Right. Yeah. They just had a good facade.
Yeah. And again, there are people that where it is just a facade, and there are people that just are truly happy and they are living the life that they're kind of portraying. One big problem that the Crafts had was that Richard was not faithful. And I'm not sure he ever was. It seems as though, he just never really left that Playboy pilot lifestyle behind. Even after he got married in 1975, he reportedly had a string of affairs, and really it was his infidelity that led Helle to start thinking that she should end the marriage in 1986. And I've seen some other things that Richard has said that have been, quoted in papers and things. And, the gist of many of it was almost as if he didn't want to marry her, and he only did so because she became pregnant.
Okay. So that's his reasoning behind it.
Yeah, not a good reasoning, but I'm saying he's alluded to that fact in a number of different, or it came out in court.
Yeah, but that happens. We know that happens.
Sure, that does happen.
Yeah, I've known guys that have married somebody because per fact that they were, their girlfriend got pregnant.
And sometimes it works out great.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't.
Nope.
But again, I think you can say that about everything, right? There is no sure thing. No matter what the situation is where you enter in a relationship or you enter into a marriage, there's no situation that is going to ensure that it's going to end up perfectly.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
I don't think there's any perfect relationship anyway.
No.
I think it comes down to about the work put into it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're just some bad apples, man.
and sometimes the work can't say that.
No, because there's some bad apples out there.
Helle hired a divorce attorney. So, I think based on that, she was pretty serious about it, right? Yeah. That was more than just talk of, I don't know if I still want to be married.
It's throwing down some retainer fee.
Yes.
It's getting serious.
Now, on top of that, she hired a private detective. So I think that right there tells you something about what she thought was going on.
Yeah.
And it also, again, tells you how serious she was.
Yeah, she wanted to make sure everything went the way she needed to go to get out of that, marriage.
And I think she was definitely right to hire a PI because he uncovered that Richard was involved in a relationship with a woman in New Jersey. So, I think to start out, before we really dive in here, this is important. Helle Crafts is talking with a divorce attorney, has a PI who's essentially proved that her suspicions are correct.
Right.
And we'll find out as we go along that she was ready to serve. She was ready to draw up those papers and have Richard serve. But she never got that chance because on November 18th, 1986, Helle was dropped off at her house by some friends after she returned home on a flight from Frankfurt, Germany. She was never seen again. And her friends became concerned when she didn't show up for work because that was so far out of the norm for her. She was one of those people that didn't miss work. I think on top of that, she had told some friends that she was planning on serving Richard with divorce papers, but she was scared about what he might do once he got served. I mentioned it. He had a very large gun collection. This is something that she had mentioned to friends as well. It was part of the reason why she was extremely fearful. Okay, he's going to get these papers.
Right.
He's going to fly into a rage, and he has access to all these guns.
He's got this little mini armory.
Yeah. She told friends that Richard had made comments in the past that marriage was forever. And I think they probably even went further than that, saying, you can't get out type of comments. I won't let you out because we signed up for this thing and it's forever. Now I'm going to cheat. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do.
I'm going to do what I have to get through this. But we're staying together.
But we're staying together.
Yeah.
Come hell or high water. But the other big thing that she told some of her friends was, hey, check on me. If I don't show up, if something seems out of the ordinary, if something happens to me, come looking for me.
Yeah.
Okay. You hear that from one of your good friends, you might be a little worried.
Be a little alarming for sure.
And I think they were, right? So she doesn't show up for work. It prompted them to call not only the police, but also her attorney. I think later on, Helle's private detective, a guy by the name of Keith Mayo, he also called police. And I think he's actually the one that officially reported her missing. But her friends who called fairly early on were told by the Newtown police, hey, don't worry, she'll show up.
Yeah, she's just out and about doing something. Of course she'll show up.
Yeah, she'll surface eventually. Now, Keith Mayo, he later called for an investigation into the handling of Helle's case by police because he said they didn't take any of the calls they received about her disappearance seriously. And I know, especially in the beginning, the police took quite a bit of heat.
And they should have.
And they should have, for not taking the case as seriously as many people thought that they should have.
In this time frame, we've heard that in other cases, that 70s, 80s.
Let's wait and see. Now, a lot of times when we're talking about even kids, which we are always flabbergasted by.
Right.
But it definitely did happen with adults because she was an adult. She had the freedom to not come home if she didn't want to, unlike a 12, 13, 14-year-old. So I get that in, let's say, the first day. But this is a woman who has 3 children.
Yeah.
And, as the days go on, to not start to take that more seriously, I really think that's where the police took the majority of the heat. At a certain point, you got to say, okay, we've looked at this woman's situation. She's very responsible. She's always home to take care of her 3 kids. What are the chances that she just up and left and abandoned her 3 kids? Probably not very likely.
The odds are low.
This is getting suspicious. We better look into it. But police did eventually start to investigate her disappearance sometime in December. They interviewed the family's au pair, a woman by the name of Dawn Thomas, who told them that Richard had told her a few different things about where Helle was. He first said she had driven to his sister's house, even though Apparently, there was a pretty severe winter storm going on at the time. So his thing was she got up early the next morning and drove to his sister's house ahead of them. Now, we're going to load up and we're going to go to my sister's house as well.
Right.
Later in the morning. And they did that. They got to Richard's sister's house. He dropped off Don Thomas and the kids and didn't return until about 7 p.m. But his wife was not there. Then later, Don said that Richard told her Helle had gone to Denmark to take care of her ailing mother. But she also said that Richard would leave notes around the house. One time he left a note that said, Helle called. This is days after she's vanished.
Right.
Don also told investigators that she noticed a large stain on the bedroom carpet. And when she asked Richard about it, if he needed help cleaning it up, he said no, he would take care of it and that he spilled some kerosene on the carpet. Now, I don't remember ever taking kerosene into my bedroom, but okay. Maybe you got some kind of special kerosene heater in there. I don't know.
Back in the 80s, we ran some kerosene heaters in our house,
Did you? Did you have a $250,000 house in 1980?
No, but we ran some kerosene heaters.
So I'm not saying they couldn't have.
Yeah.
What I am saying is they had what was about a $250,000 house in 1980.
Right.
I don't know if they would have needed a kerosene heater in the bedroom or not.
Right.
So I never found out anything about that. To me, it seems strange, just knowing what type of house they lived in, but who knows?
But beware to spill it,
Really, that wasn't the weird part to me. The weird part was I've got it in my bedroom at all, but because if I got any kind of liquid in the bedroom, well, there's a chance I could spill it, I guess.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. Once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like their 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. Don later said that Richard removed large pieces of the carpet from a number of different rooms. So Gibbs, I think this talk with Don was enough for police to center their suspicions on Richard Crafts, and I think it should have been. Right? Dawn's information, along with the things that Helle's friends and her PI were saying, it had to make Richard Crafts look like a viable suspect.
At a minimum, a person of interest.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So police did call him in for questioning, and they even asked him to take a lie detector test, which he did, and passed. So I think the passing of this lie detector test, it caused kind of a rift, right? Some in law enforcement saw this as proof of his innocence. Others did not. Now, this is 1980 something, right? They put a lot more emphasis into lie detector tests back then. I think much more so than they do today. But everything changed when they got a hold of his credit card purchase history. They saw that just a few days before his wife's disappearance, Richard had purchased a large freezer, and he picked it up the day before she went missing. All right. So maybe something coincidental.
Or kind of suspicious.
Or something suspicious. But then they saw a $900 charge at a place called Darian's Rentals, which turned out to be for a wood chipper.
Now.
All right, so I've got a wood chipper and I've got a freezer. Maybe the man needed to get rid of a large amount of wood.
Yeah.
You know, maybe another coincidence. But I think once you start to have so many different coincidences, you start to think probably none of them are a coincidence.
Exactly.
And I just like to say the word coincidence.
You just want to see if I would say coincidence.
I'm trying to get you to say it, and you just did.
Yeah.
Police later learned that he also rented a U-Haul truck, which he used to haul the wood chipper. And later on, they would get the wood chipper from the rental agency and take it in for testing. But one of the big things in the case was when a witness came forward to say that he saw the wood chipper and the truck on the side of the road as he was plowing snow. And I think he could even put Richard Crafts there, which was huge.
Yeah, huge for the case.
So this guy was able to lead detectives to the spot where he said he saw Richard, the U-Haul, the wood chipper, and it was just up from the river. It was like very close to the river. So this led authorities to begin a massive search of the riverbanks and the river itself. Ultimately, they found an envelope with Helle's name on it. Okay, that's a huge find. Why in the world would an envelope with her name on it be on the muddy riverbank?
Right, where they said they
exactly
saw.
Where this guy said he saw her husband. Divers found a chainsaw in the river, and searchers found some pieces of human remains. I think a lot of it was scattered on, kind of on this muddy riverbank.
Right.
The serial number had been filed off the chainsaw, but technicians were eventually able to figure out that it matched a receipt showing Richard had purchased the chainsaw in 1981.
Not looking good for Richard, is it?
No, not at all. I think the pieces of the puzzle are definitely starting to fall into place. Famed Dr. Henry Lee wrote in his book, Cracking Cases, in the end, our team's efforts eventually led to the discovery of 2,660 strands of blonde hair, 69 slivers of human bone, 5 droplets of human blood, 2 teeth, a truncated piece of human skull, 3 ounces of human tissue, a portion of a human finger, 1 fingernail, and 1 portion of toenail. So Gibbs, this would prove to be the remains of Helle Crafts.
That's a huge find right there.
It's a huge find, but when you look at it and you really kind of break it down, think about how small of a find it is literally. Figuratively, it's huge, right, in the case. But when you look at literally what they found, 2,000 hairs is nothing.
No, 5 droplets of blood? Really?
3 ounces of human remains. You know what 3 ounces is?
Yeah.
It's so little. A couple of teeth.
But combined, it's what they needed to move this case forward.
It is. It's also going to be the central issue at trial. So we'll get into that. Investigators got a search warrant for the Kraft home. They turned everything upside down. They did luminol testing, and they did find some blood in the house, and it proved to be a match to Helle's blood type. They also seized 51 guns, some hand grenades,
Hand grenades.
and a crossbow.
Hand grenades.
Hand grenades.
Never know when you need a hand grenade.
I get being a gun collector. I've got some guns myself, not 51.
Right.
That's quite a few. You know what I don't have? Hand
No
grenades.
hand grenades, do you?
No.
I don't know if anybody should really have a hand grenade.
I've never seen where maybe I would use that in a self-defense situation to
Yeah.
protect my house, because, it's kind of hard to know where all that's going to go.
You're not the Punisher.
No, I'm not the Punisher. But as you said, Gibbs, really not looking good for Richard, right? When all this stuff comes out.
Not at all.
Richard was arrested on Tuesday, January 12th, 1987, and booked into the Bridgeport Correctional Center on a $750,000 bond.
It's healthy.
It's healthy, but you also have to look at how much money this guy makes, how much maybe he had in the bank, and maybe the fact that he travels quite a bit. He's a pilot.
He can probably jump on a plane and fly it wherever he wants.
Or charter his own plane and get the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah.
After his arrest, both Eastern Airlines and the Southbury police suspended him, which you can kind of expect would happen. He was charged with murdering his wife, Helle Crafts. In a pretrial hearing in March of 1987, Helle's divorce attorney testified that she had disclosed that she was afraid for her life. She also said that her husband, Richard, had been physically abusive on at least one occasion. The evidence that the attorney had been building for the divorce was presented. They had photographs of Richard with another woman. So I think you take all of this, right, along with the physical evidence the authorities had found, and it was definitely enough to send Crafts to trial. And by this time, things were becoming a little bit circus-like. The media had really picked up on this story.
Yeah. Kind of like a 3-ring circus.
Yeah. When you're talking about, okay, the thought is this man killed his wife, chopped her up, and put her in a wood chipper, the media is going to come and cover that because it's sensational.
It is.
People want to read about that.
It's definitely going to be the type of headlines that grab people, pull them into your periodicals.
Well, and speaking of headlines, there was some that said wood chip murderer. There was one that said chopped to pieces. Those are the things that kind of grab people.
Just a little reading on the train into work.
For better or for worse. But because of the publicity, the trial was moved to New London, Connecticut. Crafts pleaded not guilty, and he asked for a jury trial. The trial began in May of 1988. And I've kind of already talked about some of this, but it was a very unusual trial, right? This was the first murder prosecution in the state of Connecticut where they didn't have the body of the victim. And Gibbs, we both know from the research that we've done throughout the years, for a very long time, it was kind of always thought to have been next to impossible to get a conviction without a body in years prior.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you had people like the mob, the mafia, who would go to great lengths to ensure that bodies were never recovered.
Well, they never would get rid of a body whole, right? They always like to chop the bodies up themselves.
Yeah, or weight them down and make sure that they sank to the bottom of the
so they
river.
could not be found.
Yeah. I think part of that was because it was kind of always viewed back in the day as extremely difficult to convict somebody of murder if you couldn't really prove they were dead.
Right.
Because if you don't have a body, how are you proving that this person is actually dead, not just off somewhere escaping?
Yeah, all you need to do is pay a couple witnesses to say, hey, I saw Big Bob down in Atlantic City playing cards, man.
Big Bob?
Big Bob.
Big Bob. So as this trial got underway, the state contended that Richard Kraft killed his wife, Helle, but they conceded that they really were not sure exactly how he did it. There were definite police theories, and most of those centered around him hitting her with something in the bedroom. That would have explained the big stain. Then he put her body in the freezer until he could dispose of it. Now, what the state was sure of was that he used a chainsaw and a wood chipper to dispose of her body.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, I don't want to get super graphic, but if you're going to cut something and then put it through a chipper, it's just like if you're going to make some prime rib sandwiches, you're going to freeze that prime rib a little bit before you put it on your slicer because it's going to slice so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
And be less messy.
I got you.
Versus taking it when it's in the raw form. So probably the similar premise.
Yeah. I don't know how you equate a body with prime rib, but I get the thought process behind it.
Yeah.
Well, I would think at the very least, you're going to have less blood, right? You're not going to have this flowing massive amount of blood when you start to cut a body into pieces because it's frozen. The prosecution called more than 100 witnesses, and they introduced around 650 exhibits during this trial, which lasted almost 2 months. I know one thing that they really stressed was that Richard Crafts didn't even report his wife missing. Those reports kind of came from friends. They came from her private detective.
Certainly doesn't help his case.
No, I think even if you're going through an issue with your spouse and you're battling, or one person says, oh, I'm thinking about getting out of this relationship, you've got 3 children. And if that person is supposed to come home and doesn't come home, at some point, if not that night, the next day, you really need to call somebody.
Right.
And the fact that you don't kind of is naturally going to make people think that you either had something to do with it, or, man, you're just a really callous SOB and you just didn't give a shit.
Well, then on top of that, you're making up stories that she flew back to, Denmark.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting all these things together for sure. The defense argued now that Helle Craft was still alive. Right? There was no evidence to prove otherwise. They said that she left voluntarily. She left her family, and it would have been easy for her because of her experience in world travel and the fact that she was fluent in a bunch of different languages.
Well, you'd have to believe that she'd want to leave her 3 kids behind.
Yes. You would have to believe that to believe the defense's theory.
Right.
But as you always say, you have to pull out all the stops, right, as a defense attorney to try to create some type of reasonable doubt. What else are you going to do? The state doesn't have a body, so you're going to say, hey, the state hasn't proved that this woman's even dead. How can you convict my client of a murder when they can't prove that a murder occurred?
Present the body to us.
Now, what the prosecution did was they had Dr. Henry Lee testify about the remains that were found that he said were proved to be Helle. He even said that he was able to match the nail polish found on a fingernail to nail polish found in the Craft home.
That's telling.
It's telling, but what does it prove?
I think it proves that it could be her, right? Because she has the same nail polish in her home.
Sure.
But there could be 3 other women on that street that had that same nail polish that bought it from the same store.
Yeah, and I think that's really what I'm asking is, it's when you say it's telling, I do think it is. But does it prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this is her? Next, they had some odontologists testify that they were able to match the crown on a partial tooth that was found to Helle's dental records.
Now, to me, now we're really getting into some more concrete.
Yes, a little more definitive maybe. I think this was a really big key to the case, right? I've already said it. The prosecution had to prove to the jury that Helle Crafts was dead. Without that, it would be very difficult for them to get a conviction.
I think the nail polish makes you go, whoa, really? Interesting. When you have 2 odontologists saying this matches that.
Yes, and one of them, if I remember correctly, was a famous one, Lowell Levine. I know we've talked about him in other cases. He's a very famous odontologist. I'll go back to that 3 ounces of what was described as human tissue. 3 ounces. Gibbs, it's not much at all.
That's just not a lot of volume. I mean, you think about 3 ounces, that's just like a couple pieces of steak or chicken in your hand. You know, it's not a lot.
No, it's not a lot at all. Helle's divorce attorney testified about getting the divorce papers ready, getting ready to serve them. I think they were due to be served the week after Helle vanished. Don Thomas, the au pair, the nanny, she testified about the large stain that she had seen in the home, as well as the way that Richard acted in the days after Helle disappeared. She testified that Richard bought a new freezer for the basement because, as he said, the old one was broken.
Yeah, but Don said, hey, that old one, it was working just fine.
Yeah, and this was big because, part of the state theory is that he put her in the old freezer until he was ready to dispose of her body. And then he got rid of the old freezer and replaced it with this new one.
The way he got rid of the evidence inside the old one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, Gibbs, I think when you're looking at most of this evidence presented by the prosecution, you're definitely getting the feeling as though it doesn't look good for this guy. But I think you also have to be honest and say, is any of it proving that he killed his wife? Not only that, but proved it beyond a reasonable doubt, because that's a big qualifier.
I mean, it's the job of the prosecution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Drive that home.
I don't think really any of these things on its own kind of does that. You're going to have to go with an accumulation of all of it and say, the preponderance of the evidence,
right?
So much of it points to the fact that he did this. But it's going to be a hard task for the jury. The defense theorized that the envelope had been planted at the river. They said the case against their client was fabricated. Evidence had been tampered with.
Well, I mean, it's not a stretch to say that law enforcement has done that in the past.
No, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It has been done.
Yeah.
Now, do I think, most detectives or most police agencies fabricate, plant? No, I don't think so.
No, yeah, we don't.
But you'd be naive to say that it doesn't happen because it's been proven in a number of these wrongful conviction cases. The defense also did a pretty good job of planting some reasonable doubt about the state's claim that Helle was murdered after she got home from the flight. They actually got the Newtown police chief to say on the stand that Don Thomas, the couple's nanny, had told him she heard Helle cough in the middle of the night, which would have been after the time the state said she was most likely murdered.
That's a pretty strong moment for the defense team.
I think so. A close friend of the couple testified that he was in the master bedroom on November 20th and he saw no big stain, basically contradicting what Don Thomas had testified to. So that's why I say I think they did a pretty good job bringing in some witnesses that maybe could have planted some reasonable doubt. My wife and I do a lot of shopping online, and we always use Rakuten. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Macy's, Nike, Sephora, Dyson, and Lowe's. And that's just to name a few. Pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cash back on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It really is a no-brainer. Membership is free, and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's RAKUTEN. Your cash back really adds up. Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market, my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT, thrivemarket.com/TCAT. But the big thing in this trial is that Richard took the stand in his own defense. He got up there and he denied killing his wife. His defense attorney asked him if he knew whether Helle is alive or not. And Richard answered, "I certainly hope she is. I believe she is." He testified that he last saw his wife in the early morning hours of November 19th, 1986, and said that her last words were, "I'm leaving now." He added, "She was all right the last time I saw her, that morning of November 19th, 1986. Gibbs, one of the things that all of the paper said about Richard Crafts is that he was very calm during his testimony.
Calm and collected.
Yeah, this was not a guy that was rattled, but he was also not a guy that really got emotional about anything. And if you think about it, there were some things to get emotional about.
Sure.
Right? The prosecution is showing pictures of what they claim to be your wife's remains.
Right.
Now, was he coached not to show any emotion because that would mean that he's saying it's possible that is his wife? You could make that argument. I just don't really think he showed a single ounce of emotion during the entire trial. Now, the defense team did ask him about his infidelity, and he admitted to it, but he said his wife was well aware of it throughout the years. His defense got him to say that he was never in the area where the bone fragments and hair were found with a U-Haul truck or a woodchipper. And regarding the phone message where he told Don Thomas that Helle called, he said that was a friend of his wife's from Copenhagen who also just happened to be named Helle.
Convenient.
It's convenient. Now, that could be a very popular name.
And it is. I know we have several listeners with that name.
Yeah, very popular. But it's also a convenient way to explain why you would have made that statement or written that down on a piece of paper. He did acknowledge that he rented the wood chipper, but he said he did so to get rid of some brush, nothing more. Now, the one thing I really had a hard time finding was what the prosecution did in their cross. Because normally, that's one of the things that you like to talk about is, okay, it's great to get up there and tell your side of the story, but you are opening yourself up to cross-examination.
Yeah, and I just feel it's never good to put your client up on the stand. Like you said, you're really opening yourself up, and that can go bad really quick because you don't know how the jury's going to interpret what you're saying and how you're acting. Now, I think there's another side of that argument that some people make, and it's that the jury, I shouldn't say every jury, but a lot of juries want to hear the defendant say, "I did not do this." And when they don't hear that, there are some folks that feel as though, by choosing not to testify, you're making yourself
appear guilty.
Yeah.
Now, not every jury, I'm sure, takes it that way, but that's an argument that some people make. But I just don't have, and maybe it's that they really weren't able to trip him up, or there wasn't any big bombshells during the cross, and that's why there really wasn't that much out there about it. Once the jury got the case, they deliberated for 17 days. I don't know if we've ever had a case where a jury's deliberated for that long.
It's a long time.
17 days.
Yeah. As a defense team, you're feeling pretty good.
Oh, yeah. You got to be over the moon, because normally the thought process is the longer that the jury takes to deliberate, the more split they are, which normally is good for your client. And ultimately, the jury was deadlocked, causing the judge to announce a mistrial. The big issue, as I understand it, was whether or not they believed the state had proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the remains found were that of Helle Crafts, proving that she was deceased. I already said that, right? I said that was going to be the hurdle, and I think it was. Something else that I found interesting is that they were only given one guilty option, and that was murder.
Yeah.
They were not instructed to consider a lesser charge of manslaughter, but it really came down to one juror. And this one juror said that he could no longer deliberate with an open mind because they had voted so many times and nothing was changing. The judge said that this juror told him, "I'm out of here and I'm not going back in." It was reported that before the mistrial, the vote was 11-1 in favor of conviction, with this one juror being the lone holdout and the person who refused to continue to deliberate. So it was that close, right? You just had one person who was not convinced, and no matter probably what they tried, he was not going to change his mind. He was dug in.
So this is it. I'm done.
And he's like, there's no use to keep voting because I'm not going to change my mind. So the first trial ended in a mistrial on July 15th, 1988. But you know, Gibbs, they weren't going to let Richard Crafts go.
No.
Definitely, they were going to try him again. His second trial began on September 7th, 1989. This time moved again to another city because of all the publicity surrounding the case. And we're not going to dive into this trial in any detail because essentially it was pretty much the same trial.
Yeah, they're going to have the same evidence, the same witnesses. The only thing different is going to be the jury this time.
Yeah, it was very, very similar in what was presented. Now, we'll say the prosecution had the same task to prove to the jury that Helle Craft was dead and that her husband Richard had killed her and disposed of her body. The defense again contended that the state couldn't prove that Helle was dead, let alone that Richard Craft had killed her. Now, I do think one difference in this trial, and I don't know how different it was, but I definitely got the feeling that the prosecution spent more time in the second trial focusing on the issue of Helle leaving her children, right?
Right.
A woman like Helle Crafts would have never voluntarily left her 3 children behind.
That's going to strike a chord with most of the women jurors because they're going to agree. As a mother, why would they ever leave their kids?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact makeup, but I think it was like 11 men and 1 woman.
Yeah.
I think. I could be wrong about that.
Well, I think some of the men might feel the same way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I would feel that way about my wife.
Yeah.
If you asked me that question, I would say there's no way. There's no way in hell that my wife would ever leave her 2 daughters behind. I don't care what is going on. I don't care if she hates me to the moon and back.
Right. She
ain't leaving without those 2 girls.
Exactly.
It just ain't going to happen. But again, in this trial, Richard Craft showed no emotion. He just sat very calmly through the entire thing. The jury got the case on November 20th. And this time it only took them about 8 hours to unanimously find Richard Craft guilty of the murder of his wife, Helle. He didn't show any emotion as the verdict was read, nor did he show any emotion in January 1990 when the judge sentenced him to 50 years in prison. And one thing I found very interesting was that Richard's own sister, who, by this time was taking care of his 3 children, she asked the judge to give him the maximum. So I think that right there tells you what his own sister thought about his guilt. And I think a lot of it came from how he treated his children.
Sure.
Because a lot of times in these cases that we profile, your family sticks up for you in a lot of instances. So, to kind of hear that this guy's own sister was asking the judge to give him the maximum, to me, it really tells me something. Either she already hated him for another reason, or she had viewed all the evidence, she had interacted with him, and based on all of that, she knew that this guy was guilty.
She's like, you can never be around these kids again.
Yeah. So Richard Crafts, at the age of 53, was sent off to prison to serve out, really, Gibbs, what should have been the remainder of his days. But that was not to be. His defense team did appeal, and in 1993, the Connecticut State Supreme Court upheld his conviction, saying that he indeed did receive a fair trial. Now, the vote was 4-1. There was one justice who dissented, stating that he believed Kraft should receive a new trial because he didn't think that the jury should have been allowed to hear from Helle's friends regarding different things that she told them about being afraid of Richard. And I thought that too, as I was kind of, going through the research. There seemed to be a lot of hearsay evidence.
And typically they would not allow that. Yeah.
There seems to have been a lot of hearsay evidence that was allowed to be introduced at trial. The justice even said it. This type of testimony does not allow the defendant to confront or cross-examine her statement. And that's usually why it's kept out, right? If you tell Joe Smith that I did something, but you're not at trial, it's not coming out of your mouth.
Right.
It's coming out of the mouth of Joe Smith.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't allow me to cross-examine you and say, hey, Mike Gibson, why did you say that?
Right.
You can't do it.
No,
so
it's not an option.
I think that's why in a lot of states, that type of hearsay evidence just doesn't make it in.
Yeah, it's not fair to the defendant.
Yeah, no, I agree. So he lost his bid at his appeal to the Connecticut State Supreme Court. But Richard Crafts was released from prison to a halfway house in January of this year.
Pretty recent.
Yeah, it's this year.
About as recent as you can get.
And I mean, imagine, what he's being released into. It's not really part of the story,
right.
But, January, boom, right after that is when COVID and everything started to hit.
You're on lockdown again, buddy.
Well, so he was 82 years old.
Yeah.
I think he's either coming up on a birthday. I can't remember when his birthday is. He served 32 years in prison, not quite the 50 that he was given.
Right.
He did get credit for the 3 years that he was locked up between his arrest and his sentencing because he was never able to make that bail, that $750,000 bail. But Crafts really benefited from timing because if he had been sentenced in later years, he would have died in prison. But at the time, he qualified for what was known as good time,
right,
or good behavior time, where good behavior was rewarded with them basically shaving years, right, off of your sentence. I couldn't find much more on him after he got out, but the Hartford Courant reported that his sentence was due to be finished in June. So I'm assuming at this point, Gibbs, he's a free man.
Working at a grocery store?
Well, it does remind me a little bit of Brooksy.
Yeah.
From Shawshank Redemption. I have no idea what a guy does at the age of 82 after spending 35 years of his life locked up. I just don't know.
Welcome to Walmart. These carts have been sanitized. Welcome to Walmart.
Okay, you might
parts
get
have been
away.
sanitized.
You might get away with that part.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world around you has changed so much. It's moving so fast.
It's a whole different.
It
ball
is.
wax,
I don't know how people catch up and learn to cope. We've done it, but over 35 years.
It would be like Brooksy wanting to, either go back in or end your life. Right?
Go away.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, this is the guy who killed his wife. So it's not like I'm getting all misty-eyed about it or anything.
He does have some kids out there. I don't know how they felt about it.
And I never did find anything about that. My assumption is it's not like they're wanting to give interviews.
Right.
And say, hey, yeah, this was my dad.
Yeah, he's living with us now. And
I didn't find anything about that. I mean, I think he's damn lucky that he got out at all because, and you can say 35 years is no joke, but when you look at this case, right, as we wrap up this case, it's extremely gruesome. You have a man who killed his wife, put her body in a freezer, then cut her up with a chainsaw and put the pieces through a rented wood chipper. Man, he was really trying to get away with this.
Yeah, he was.
And he had to have thought about it at least a little bit ahead of time because some of these purchases and these things happened, a little bit in advance. He bought a new freezer, disposed of the old one that most likely contained some damning evidence.
Yeah.
He cut out big pieces of the carpet, and I think he replaced a lot of it. I just don't understand how a husband could, number one, murder his wife and the mother of his 3 children, right? That's one.
Mm-hmm.
But then 2, cut her body up with a chainsaw and put the pieces in a wood chipper.
You really have to hate that person.
That adds a whole nother element on top of murder to me. Because, again, I know people snap. I know things like that happen.
You got the rage.
There's rage. You do things when you're seeing red. Okay. You still have to pay the price for that.
Right.
But the second piece, that's not rage. I'm really trying to get away with this.
That's calculated.
I don't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. But this is also, again, the mother of my 3 children, the woman that I'm supposed to love. How could you cut that person up and then scatter her into a million pieces
on the riverbank?
On the river.
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine it. You have to have zero feelings at that point, right? To be able to do something like that.
You have to definitely be as cold as somebody could ever be.
Yeah. But to me, one of the big fascinations with this case, and I mentioned it, right, is the first time in Connecticut that the state was able to prosecute. It was also the first time they were able to get a conviction without having the body of the victim. And I think, really that's where the testimony of Dr. Henry Lee and the odontologists and Lowell Levine came up huge. Because I think without them being able to articulate to the jury how they were so confident that they could peg these remains as belonging to Helle Crafts, I just don't know how you could convict someone.
Well, they certainly added credibility.
And they added credibility. Now, of course, we know what Dr. Henry Lee went on to do and, some of the high profile cases that he's been involved with. But that's it, Gibbs, for the case of Richard Crafts, the murder of Helle Crafts. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey guys, this is Danielle from California, Danny, California. I'm just calling because I'm super excited. I just got to Lorraine Warnos and I've been waiting for it since I started this podcast in September 7th. Anyways, my boyfriend shipped out today. I had to drop him off at the airport. So you guys kept me company all the way home and I just wanted to say thanks and I'm super excited. I finally got to hear the 200 and I'm catching up. So thanks a heap and keep everything going the same way and you're doing great and keep your own time ticking, guys. Bye.
Well, she's binging through fast.
Yeah, she really is. And so she'll hear this pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And maybe she already, or maybe she'll hear it this Sunday because, we're always a little behind on the voicemails. But so boyfriend shipping out, appreciate his service.
Absolutely.
For sure. And we appreciate you listening.
Yeah.
Hey guys, love the show. I'm just calling from Victoria, BC, Canada, and I'm calling because listening to your podcast, I actually realized that I know a murderer. In 2017, a man named Andrew Barry murdered his two daughters, Aubrey and Chloe, who were 4 and 6 years old at the time, on Christmas Day. And I'll never forget the day that I saw his face on the front page of the newspaper. And I worked at a corner store in the neighborhood, and they would all come in together, the three of them. So I knew Chloe and Aubrey as well as Andrew. I had a couple conversations with Andrew. Never really thought he seemed like a weird guy or anything. Anyways, love the show, and
It's definitely strange. Been there myself, when you...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, you knew someone that turned out to be a murderer.
Yeah, I knew two people, so it's
I don't know
bizarre.
what that says about you, but
well,
I do think it's strange. I've never been in that position, but hearing him talk about it, okay, they're coming into the store, you're talking with these people, you're getting a sense of them.
Yeah.
There's no clue that this guy is a murderer, that he's going to end up, killing his two daughters. So, really the question for me is how many of us go through our daily lives interacting with people, meeting people, seeing people.
Right.
We don't know what they've done or what they may do.
They could be sitting right across from you at this very moment.
They could be. They could each be sitting across from one another.
That's true.
Hi, my name is Abby. I've been listening for about a year now. I finally became a supporter through Patreon. I'm going back and listening to old episodes now, and I'm listening to the Paul Esser of Rhodes one right now, and I'm calling because at about minute 50 and 30 seconds, they're talking about hair left behind at the scene, and then it goes to a commercial break. And when it does the commercial break, I was like, oh God, it's going to be for Madison Reed. And it was. Anyway, I thought it was pretty funny. So thanks for all your great show stuff, and keep your own time ticking. Thank you. Bye.
So a little unfortunate timing. And I don't know if I've talked about this, Gibbs. Some of the commercials or some of the advertisements that we do, they're kind of stitched in later on.
Yeah.
And they can be put into any of the episodes going all the way back. There's just a placeholder for them.
Exactly.
So, you're probably not thinking at the time when you put that placeholder in, boy, I hope we don't get a hair care product here. It's just,
but we've had that happen with other, advertisement as well.
We have
some, unfortunate way it got placed, but
just a really bad coincidence. There are some advertisements that are baked in, they're built into the episode and they never leave. And then there are some that kind of flow in and out depending on timing and things like that.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Nate out here in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm just listening through for the third time the series, all your guys' episodes, in between getting the new ones. I'm on Arthur Shawcross, and I just got to the point where Mike, you tell Gibby he made one of the best comments he's made of all time about how Arthur may have done the whole thing with the broom to himself. Just really hit me that Gibby's probably right. He probably did that with a broom to himself, and in order to make it seem culpable or make himself a victim, he associated his mom with it. That made a lot of sense. So I want to give a shout out to Gibby for again making an awesome deduction. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you for providing good entertainment, both from education and you guys have a great dynamic. So love you guys. Keep your own time ticking. Keep doing what you're doing. And I will again keep waiting for every release coming out. Thanks. Bye.
There's no doubt why my third nickname is Sherlock.
Sherlock.
Yeah.
Because why?
Because
you didn't think I was going to ask you a question about
why you
it,
always
did
got to
you?
go so deep? Why do you got to go deep, man?
My headphones just fell off my head on that one.
Slid right off that.
I got so cracked up.
Yeah.
But I kind of, that's been a long time ago. Arthur Shawcross been a long time ago. Some of that you and I have had to block out.
Oh.
Because it was nightmarish. But I do remember what he's talking about. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I remember it got a lot of traction.
Yeah.
That it was
Brilliant.
something that people really latched onto, and they thought, man, Gibby really was spot on there.
Sherlock-ish.
Sherlockian.
Sherlockian.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
We got mailbag Gibbs.
Yeah, what we get?
So I found out that our good friend Elizabeth Gunaka sent the I Pause My True Crime podcast to be here.
Oh,
That was from last week.
that's, yeah. Okay.
I found out that was her. Angela Perpingan sent you a Starbucks gift card
Yeah, appreciate that.
to
Thank you.
use while you're on the mend.
Yeah.
And then Donna Paduano sent us some amazing red velvet cupcakes
Tasty.
from a great local bakery here in Dayton. They were amazing.
Tasty.
They were very good. So we appreciate all of that. That's it, buddy,
That's it.
for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike,
And Gibby.
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
How did the internet go from this
You could actually find what you were looking for right away, bang.
to this?
I feel like I'm in hell.
Spoiler alert, it was not an accident. I'm Cory Doctorow, host of Who Broke the Internet from CBC's Understood. In this 4-part series, I'm going to tell you why the internet sucks now, whose fault it is, and my plan to fix it. Find Who Broke the Internet on whatever terrible app you get your podcasts.